The Eldon B. Mahone United States Courthouse sits on 10th Street in downtown Fort Worth, a flat slab of limestone and dark glass that handles federal cases for the Northern District of Texas. On the morning of June 18, 2026, 6 U.S. Marshals stand at the doors of courtroom 5A. Inside, the defendant is already seated. His name is Bram Olson Pruitt. He is 34 years old. He has spent the last 10 months in pretrial detention at the Mansfield Law Enforcement Center, 20 miles south. He has not spoken publicly since the night of the attack. The attack happened on July 4, 2025, Independence Day. Just after 10:30 p.m., a group of 10 masked individuals approached the Prairieland Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas, a 707-bed facility operated by LaSalle Corrections under contract with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They came in 2 vehicles. They carried fireworks, spray paint, and 4 semi-automatic rifles. They opened fire on the guard tower. One Alvarado police officer was struck in the neck. He survived, barely. That officer's name is Lincoln Avitia. He is 41. He has a daughter in 3rd grade. The bullet missed his carotid artery by less than a centimeter. He spent 11 days at JPS Hospital in Fort Worth and returned to limited duty in December. He will testify before sentencing concludes. But not yet. Federal prosecutors charged Olson Pruitt and his 9 co-defendants under a stack of statutes that read like a federal sentencing primer. 18 U.S.C. Section 1114, attempted murder of a federal officer. 18 U.S.C. Section 924C, discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence. 18 U.S.C. Section 2332A, use of a weapon of mass destruction tied to the fireworks and Molotov-style devices recovered from the staging vehicle. And the centerpiece, 18 U.S.C. Section 2339A, providing material support for an act of terrorism. The indictment ran 141 pages. Lead prosecutor Sarah Vance, an assistant U.S. attorney with 11 years in the Northern District, called it the largest domestic terrorism case her office had ever filed. The defense had a different read. Attorney Mira Halberstam, a Dallas-based civil rights lawyer brought in pro bono, argued that her client was a community organizer pushed toward violence by what he saw as deliberate state brutality inside Prairieland. She cited the deaths of 2 detainees. Renee Good, a 46-year-old transgender woman from Honduras who died on March 16, 2024, after what the family alleged was delayed medical care. Alex Preti, a 29-year-old Brazilian national who died on November 3, 2024, ruled a suicide by the Johnson County medical examiner. Halberstam did not deny that her client fired a weapon. She asked the court to consider why. The court would not consider it, not as a defense. Judge Connor ruled in pretrial motions that motive could be discussed at sentencing, but not used to negate intent. The jury heard the evidence in a 6-week trial that began on March 9, 2026. They deliberated for 4 hours. They returned guilty verdicts on every count. Now comes the sentencing. The government's recommendation is life without parole. Vance stands at the podium in a charcoal suit, reading from a binder that includes ballistics reports, hospital records, and photographs of the Prairieland guard tower riddled with 5.56mm holes. She names the weapons recovered: 2 AR-15 style rifles, 1 Ruger Mini 14, 1 older AKM variant. She names the rounds fired: 73 confirmed casings on scene. She names the targets: 3 guards in the tower, 2 corrections officers in the Sallyport, 1 arriving Alvarado patrol unit. Halberstam counters with mitigation. Olson Pruitt has no prior felonies. He worked as a paralegal in Denton. He has a sister with Down syndrome whom he visited every Sunday until his arrest. The defense presents a letter from a forensic psychiatrist diagnosing post-traumatic stress disorder linked to a 2019 deportation case Olson Pruitt worked on as a legal assistant, a client who was removed to El Salvador and killed within 6 weeks. Halberstam asks for 30 years. Judge Connor takes a 20-minute recess. When he returns, he speaks for nearly 40 minutes before announcing the sentence.
He addresses the deaths inside Prairieland directly. He says they are not the subject of this proceeding, but he acknowledges that conditions at federal detention facilities have been the subject of multiple Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General reports, including a March 2025 review that flagged Prairieland for medical response delays. He notes that those concerns will not justify what happened on the night of July 4th. They cannot. The law does not allow a private citizen to answer a grievance with rifles aimed at a guard tower. Then he reads the number. 100 years. Federal sentences carry no parole. Olson Pruitt will be eligible for release on a compassionate basis only after his 90th birthday. The math is its own sentence. The co-defendants are sentenced over the following 2 days. Margot Kieran, 28, identified as the cell's logistics coordinator, 70 years. Devin Halls, 31, the driver of the second vehicle, 60 years. Iris Pelot, 26, who allegedly fired one of the rifles, 65 years. 5 others receive sentences ranging from 30 to 55 years. One cooperator, who pleaded out in November 2025, receives 12 years and a sealed protective designation. The total combined sentencing across the cell exceeds 500 years. That number is real. That's not a typo. The Prairieland facility reopened for normal operations on September 1, 2025, after a 58-day partial shutdown for repairs and a security overhaul. LaSalle Corrections spent an estimated $4.2 million on hardened perimeter fencing, 2 new guard tower positions, and upgraded thermal imaging cameras. ICE enforcement and removal operations covered roughly 60% of that cost through a contract modification signed by Acting Field Office Director Joaquin Reyes on August 14, 2025. The remaining funds came from LaSalle's capital reserve. No detainees were transferred out permanently during the closure. 491 were temporarily relocated to the IAH Secure Adult Detention Facility in Livingston and the South Texas ICE Processing Center in Pearsall. The obvious question is how a group of 10 people, several of whom had no military or tactical background, managed to coordinate an armed assault on a federal contract facility without being detected. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force in Dallas began investigating Olson Pruitt's broader network in late 2024 after a confidential informant flagged encrypted signal traffic discussing what the informant described as a planned action at a North Texas detention site. Surveillance was approved. Wiretaps followed. But the cell's operational tempo accelerated faster than the Bureau anticipated. By the time the JTTF had probable cause for arrests, the attack was 6 days away. They missed it by less than a week. Think about what that means. A federal task force watching a domestic terrorism cell in real time with court-authorized surveillance running was outpaced by the cell's own planning calendar. The Bureau's after-action review, completed in February 2026, recommended changes to how signal-based threat indicators are prioritized for emergency intervention. Those changes are still being implemented. Inside Prairieland, the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Pretty became the center of the defendant's allocution. When given the chance to speak before sentencing, Olson Pruitt did not apologize.
He read from a 4-page statement. He named both detainees. He named 2 more, and a man who died at Stewart Detention Center in Georgia in 2022, and a woman who died at the Eloy facility in Arizona in 2020. He said he believed armed resistance was justified because civil resistance had failed. He said the courts had failed. He said the inspectors had failed. He said the press had failed. Judge Connor let him finish. Then the judge said one sentence in reply. "Mr. Olson Pruitt, the jury heard you. So did I. And the law remains what it is." The gavel came down at 11:14 a.m. The deaths he cited are real. They are documented. They are part of a longer pattern that ICE itself has acknowledged in congressional testimony. Between fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2024, ICE recorded 97 in-custody deaths across its detention network.
Renee Good's case was reviewed by the DHS Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which issued a recommendation letter on October 22, 2024, calling for revised medical intake protocols at Prairieland. Alex Priddy's case was reviewed by the Johnson County District Attorney, who declined to pursue charges, citing insufficient evidence of criminal negligence. Both reviews are publicly available. Neither reaches the conclusion that the defense wanted them to reach. That gap between documented institutional failure and the legal threshold required to call it a crime is the territory the defendant tried to occupy. He lost. He was always going to lose. The system has rules for grievance, and rifles are not among them. That is the one sentence in this script that is the narrator's opinion. It will not be repeated. In the aftermath, the political response broke along predictable lines. The acting ICE director issued a statement on June 19, 2026, calling the sentences a clear message that violence against federal personnel and facilities will be met with the full weight of the law. A coalition of immigrant rights organizations issued a counterstatement the same day, distancing themselves from the defendants while reiterating concerns about detention conditions. 3 members of Congress requested an updated DHS OIG inspection of Prairieland. That inspection began on June 22, 4 days after sentencing concluded. Its findings have not yet been released. Lincoln Avidia was in the courtroom for the final day of sentencing. He sat in the second row, in uniform, with his wife beside him. He did not speak to reporters as he left. He stopped once at the courthouse steps, looked back at the building, then walked to his vehicle. His daughter's 3rd-grade class had made him a banner when he came home from the hospital. It is still hanging in his living room. According to his department, he wears a soft cervical collar on cold mornings. He has declined 2 offers of disability separation. He has asked twice to be returned to full patrol duty. Both requests are pending review by the city's Risk Management Office. Inside Prairieland tonight, the population stands at 638 detainees. The new perimeter fence is 12 feet high with anti-climb plating. The thermal cameras sweep the southern approach in 8-second arcs. 2 additional guards now stand watch in the tower where the first shots landed on July 4, 2025. The bullet holes were patched within a week of the attack. The patches are still visible, if you know where to look. They are slightly lighter than the surrounding concrete. A LaSalle Corrections Shift supervisor, speaking to a Star Telegram reporter on Background in October 2025, said the new hires brought in after the attack are trained to point them out during orientation walkthroughs. The patches are part of the institutional memory now. They are also a recruitment problem. 3 guards transferred out of Prairieland in the 4 months after reopening, citing what one called the obvious. You might wonder why this case did not receive more national press during the trial. The answer is partly geography and partly timing.
The trial ran at the same time as a larger federal proceeding in the Eastern District of New York that absorbed most national legal coverage in spring 2026. The Prairieland case was covered heavily by Texas outlets, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the Dallas Morning News, the Texas Tribune, but the national wire services treated it as a regional story until the sentencing phase. By the time the 100-year number hit the news cycle on June 18th, the verdict itself was 3 months old. The numbers carried the story, not the trial. You might also wonder what happens to a man sentenced to a century in federal prison. Olson Pruitt has been designated to the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility in Florence, Colorado, ADX Florence, the federal supermax. His designation was finalized on June 22nd. He will be held in a single-occupancy cell measuring approximately 7 by 12 feet. He will be permitted 1 hour of recreation per day. His visitors will be restricted to immediate family and counsel. His sister will be permitted to visit twice per year, pending security review. Whether she will be able to travel from Texas to Colorado on that schedule is a different question.
The Bureau of Prisons does not arrange transportation for family visits. Margot Siren, the logistics coordinator, has been designated to FCI Aliceville in Alabama. Iris Pillow, who fired one of the rifles, will be held at FCI Hazleton in West Virginia. Devin Halls is going to USP Coleman II in Florida. The cell has been geographically dispersed across the federal system, a standard Bureau of Prisons practice for co-conspirators in terrorism cases. They will not see each other again. Letters between them require special administrative review and will likely be denied. The trial transcripts run to nearly 9,000 pages. The exhibit list includes 412 items, from shell casings to recovered cell phones to a hand-drawn diagram of the Prairieland perimeter found in a backpack at the staging site. The diagram is what undid them, more than any single piece of testimony. It was drawn in blue ballpoint pen on a piece of legal pad paper, with arrows marking entry points, tower angles, and a circled note that read, "Comms Blackout 2225. That paper now sits in a sealed evidence locker at the FBI Dallas field office. It will be retained for the length of the longest sentence handed down. That is 100 years, plus a margin. The question hanging over the Prairieland case is whether anything operationally changes inside ICE detention as a result. For now, the answer is partial. The agency announced on June 23, 2026, that it would conduct a broad review of medical intake procedures at all 43 of its dedicated detention facilities and 7 of its contract facilities by the end of fiscal year 2026. That review is funded at $14.7 million. It does not include the smaller hold rooms operated by ERO field offices, which together handle short-term custody for an estimated 280,000 individuals annually. Whether the review produces real change depends on whether anyone is still watching by the time it concludes. Political attention on detention conditions tends to last as long as the news cycle. The deaths of Renee Good and Alex Pretty happened in 2024. They became national news only because a man with a rifle decided they would. That is the uncomfortable shape of how attention works in this country. The defendants knew it. They bet their lives on it. Now they are paying with the only currency the federal system accepts: time. Return to the opening image. June 18th, 2026, 9:47 a.m. The beige jumpsuit, the shackles, the gavel at 11:14 a.m. By the time Olson Pruitt is loaded into the U.S. Marshals transport van outside the Mahone Courthouse, a white Ford Transit with reinforced windows and a single rear bench, it is just past noon.
Fort Worth in late June runs hot. The asphalt is already hitting 101 degrees. He climbs in. The doors close. The van moves.
A small group of supporters stands across 10th Street behind a metal barricade. 6 people. One holds a printed photograph of Renee Good. Another holds a photograph of Alex Pretty. They do not shout. They do not move. They watch the van turn west toward Interstate 30, and then they fold the photographs carefully and walk back to their cars. By 12:30 p.m., the sidewalk is empty. By 1 p.m., the courthouse doors are locked for lunch. Somewhere south of the city, the Prairieland Detention Center holds its evening count. 638 names. 2 of them, Renee Good and Alex Pretty, will never be called again. But the count goes on. The facility goes on. The system goes on. And the man who tried to stop it with rifles will spend the rest of his life in what the Bureau of Prisons calls administrative segregation. 1 hour outside, 23 hours in. 100 years. The number is real. The math is finished.